This is the first period Cumulative ADM 2021 training. I'm Amanda Leopard, Research Analyst and Accountability at ODE, and the Cumulative ADM Data Owner. We recognize that there may be more questions than usual this year. If your question is related to the reporting of Cumulative ADM, please contact your regional ESD partner or myself. If your question is related to COVID-19 changes not specific to Cumulative ADM, such as those from the Ready Schools Safe Learners Guidance, the Comprehensive Distance Learning Guidance, or anything else that you can think of, please use the dedicated ODE COVID-19 email. And on this slide, I also have some links to available guidance for this school year, including the Ready Schools Safe Learners Guidance, the Comprehensive Distance Learning Guidance, and our brand new Cumulative ADM FAQ. This training has been set up to show the changes, general important reminders, and the collection dates in the beginning of the presentation, so that anyone that just wants to view it to see this information but not the entire training can get in and get out really easily. The remainder of the training is going to go over the collection purpose, submitting the data, data submission, and additional help and contacts. Per the Ready Schools Safe Learner Guidance, the 10-day rule for withdrawals has been waived by the State Board of Education. Students should not be withdrawn when records, or should still be withdrawn when records requests are received. But otherwise, if you've been trying to communicate with the kiddo or they haven't been turning in assignments, anything like that that falls under the standard attendance, the things that qualify for attendance under Ready Schools Safe Learners, you would not drop them if you have 10 days of not being able to do that. You should still be trying to contact these kiddos so that nobody falls through the cracks. Attendance must be taken daily, regardless of online or in-person enrollment. This is a change from how online attendance has been done in the past. So this is standard for all schools, charter, regular, alternative. When they are doing online education, they need to have attendance daily. This includes online charter schools. Attendance includes participation in class activities and interactions with licensed or registered teachers during the school day, or interactions with educational assistants, paraprofessionals, and TAP family advocates through teacher-designed and facilitated processes. Interactions can be evidenced by any of the following equivalents: participating in a video class, communication from the student to the teacher via chat, text message, communication, email, things like that, a phone call between the teacher or educational assistant and the student, or for younger students with their parent, posting completed coursework to a learning management system or web-based platform or via email, or turning in completed coursework on a given day. The only other change for this year is similar to last year. The essential skill requirements have been waived for this year as well. So records requiring essential skill code will still require a code, but we are allowing the 0 value for not applicable. So your graduation records later in the year, or even program type 14s, if they're asking for that, you're going to need to have the 0 value in there. If a student did actually complete their essential skill code and you want to put that in there, you're welcome to, but if you do, you do still have to put the required date in there, otherwise it will cause an error. So these are audits out throughout each ADM period. So please remember that the end date should be the first weekday after a student's last day of enrollment. This is especially important for students who are still enrolled at the end of the period. For example, for first period, if a student is enrolled with you on October 1, which is the snapshot date for fall membership, their end date should be October 2. If you do an October 1 end date, they're actually not going to show up in fall membership because you're going to be telling me that September 30th was their last day of school. Program type 13 records are used as a temporary placeholder in first, second, and third period, and they must be replaced with membership information once it's known. Having correct data in annual, so at the end of the year, will not override that missing information right now. I do send out a reminder for these a couple times. I'm sure many people that listen to this training will have gotten one. I am kind of a hound dog about it, so I apologize, but these are really important to get filled in. And if you're using these because you don't know college credits, just keep in mind that you don't need to know if the student passed those credits, just how many they attempted. So that can often speed up that process. The resident county refers to the county where the student's parents or guardians live, or where an emancipated minor or student over 18 lives. It's not a reflection of the district's county. The resident county field is used for funding purposes and must be correctly reported. This is especially important for transfers or even for charter transfers where residency shifts to the district that's contracting with the charter school. The resident county should still reflect where that student actually lives. And lastly, remember to submit to the correct collection. There's a period of time in the coming month where exit adjustment will be open while first period is also open, so make sure that you're not making changes where you're not wanting to. So the reporting period for first period is July 1, 2020 through October 1, 2021. This July 1 through October 1 is consistent every year. The only time you'll see a change is when October 1 falls on a weekend, and then it's the nearest weekday, or the first weekday in October. The collection window is September 24th through October 26th. During this time, the collection is open to everyone to submit their data. The collection will be closed to everyone from October 27th through November 4th. During this time, it's going to be closed, and typically we do not do extensions during this time because audits are being generated. The collection is reopened for everyone during the audit review window, which is November 5th through the 13th. And then after the 13th, it's closed but can be reopened by request and will be reopened for those who receive second round audits. And the last day to make changes is January 22nd, so you want to make sure you get those in there. So first period ADM includes all students enrolled with you during the reporting period, which again is the July 1 through October 1st dates. Please note that summer school enrollment is not included, and that October 1 end date should have an October 2 end date code, or an end date used instead of October 1. The collection purpose, as everyone pretty much knows, the fall membership report uses first period data. So that's at October 1 snapshot date. We also use it for some public records requests and for the following year's dropout rates. It's used for graduation and dropout reporting. And in other years, kindergarten assessment is audited against it, but there is no kindergarten assessment this year. So we'll move on to submitted data. Submitted data includes student demographic information, instructional information, attendance information, and student outcomes. We'll go through each of these sections in more detail following this slide. So student demographic information is the first section we'll go over. Submitted students need to have their demographic information reported. Submitted students include students attending charter schools, students attending on inter-district transfers or tuition agreements, students with paid tuition, students who have been placed in a private program by their school district, and homeschool or private students who are attending your school to receive supplemental instruction. Remember, there is a gender option for non-binary gender, which is gender code X for all students and staff level collections. This came, I believe, 2 years ago. And again, I really want to grind home that the resident county should be where the students actually resides, be it for their legal guardian, their parent, or if they're emancipated or over 18, it's where they are. It is not related to the district in any way, unless the kiddo lives within their district, and then it'll be the same typically. A common error submitters will run into is a demographic mismatch error. This tends to happen when a student's enrollment has changed between two schools or districts and their personal information has been updated in SSID and no longer matches. Student demographic information must match on 3 out of 5 specific fields, but because the partial Social Security field is optional and often left blank, the system looks for 3 out of 4 fields to make a match, which is when this error becomes more prominent. With the introduction of a third gender type code, we have been seeing an increase in demographic mismatch errors on the gender field. It's important to maintain accurate reporting of gender, so please work with the other fields to correct the error and maintain the integrity of the gender field. At this time, developers are not working on a fix for this, but they do know that it's been a headache for some folks. This slide has some helpful tips for clearing this error when submitting cumulative ADM records. If you run into a scenario and need additional guidance, please reach out to your ESD partners or myself. There are a number of required student group fields and flags that are reported in cumulative ADM. Over the next few slides, we'll go into more detail about each required section. Please be sure to report this information as accurately and consistently as you can. Inconsistently reported data across collections will result in audits that will potentially need to be fixed. If a student enrolls with you and their enrollment paperwork has a different race or ethnicity information than what your SIS system is showing, you should use what is correct. Most likely, this will be the information that is indicated on the student's enrollment paperwork. As a reminder, this is a two-part question. First, is the student of Hispanic ethnicity? Second, which of these 5 listed races is the student? Select one or more. Follow the ethnicity and race category change link on this slide if you need any additional information or guidance when reporting this information for your students. So there are, and this might be a little different now, but there were 932 available languages to choose in SSID. I do believe they've been cleaning this up, and I think they still may be cleaning it up. But interestingly, just as a little aside, in 2017-18, there were 210 different languages that were reported in our collections. Students who are enrolled and reported as being in an English as a second language program, so program type 2 for that additional weighted funding, should not have English as their language of origin unless they are also reported as American Indian and Alaska Native. The economically disadvantaged flag is used to indicate a student's participation in or their eligibility for a free and reduced lunch program. Mark yes if the student was determined to be eligible based on an application for free and reduced lunch, direct certification, or the household income survey, or if the school offers lunch at no charge to all students. The household income survey should also be used for charter schools that do not participate in the National School Lunch Program and is available in English, Spanish, and Russian on the Community Eligibility Provision Oregon Department of Education webpage. Click on the link for Household Income Survey on this slide to access the CEP website. Mark no if the student was determined to be not eligible, if the student was provided lunch at no charge while their application was reviewed and was found to be not eligible, or if an otherwise non-eligible student participated in a school that provided lunch at no charge to all students and was then moved to a school that does not. One clear distinction for this school year is there are some additional qualifications for free and reduced lunch based out of Oregon. And this flag is actually a federal flag, so the eligibility has not changed. It should be based on their federal eligibility. Even if they are eligible now in Oregon because of those changes, if they didn't meet the federal, they should still be marked no. The district special education flag indicates when a student was enrolled in a district special education program between the beginning of the school year and the first school day in May, even if they were no longer receiving services on the first school day of May. And they received general education classroom instruction for less than 40% of the time, including non-regular educational settings. The district special education flag should be marked yes if these criteria are met. The special education flag indicates a student had Oregon special education eligibility and had an individualized education plan, IEP, at any time during the reporting year in any institution. The special education flag should be marked yes if these criteria are met. The special education flag must be marked yes when the district special education program flag is marked yes. Failure to do so will result in error that must be corrected before the record is saved. The district special education program flag only applies to the attending district, whereas the special education flag applies to any school or district the student has been in at any time during the year. The Indian education flag indicates student participation in a Title V program designed to meet the unique educational and culturally relative academic needs of American Indian Alaska Native students. In order to mark the Indian education flag yes, the student eligibility certification form must be completed and kept on file at the school, and the student must have received services at any point during their reporting year. The migration education flag indicates student participation in a program designed to assure that migratory children receive full and appropriate opportunities to meet the state academic content and student academic achievement standards. The migrant education flag should be marked yes if the student had a current Oregon Migrant Education Certificate of Eligibility at any point during the reporting year. This data should align with the data submitted in the Oregon Migrant Student Information System, OMSIS. While we use many flags submitted in third period cumulative ADM for reporting, accurate reporting of the Indian Education Program flag and the Migrant Education Program flag for each student in each of the reporting periods is required. Information reported in these fields may be extracted from any of the data collection periods. The military-connected flag indicates that the student has a parent or guardian who was a member of the armed forces on active duty or full-time National Guard. The military-connected flag should be marked yes if the student has a parent or guardian who was a member of the armed forces on active duty or full-time National Guard at any point during the reporting year. This flag is required on all records with an ADM enrollment date of July 1, 2017 or later. Typically, this means this field is now required for all cumulative ADM records, with the exception of Program Type 14 records that demonstrate outcomes or credential information that occurred prior to the current collection periods. Reporting military connectedness is a federal requirement beginning in the 2017-18 school year. The purpose behind obtaining this information is to ensure that the students in this population are identified for potential supports due to their unique situation that they're in. The Section 504 flag indicates that a student had a 504 eligibility, had an IEP or individualized 504 plan, and was receiving services as specified by this plan at any time during their reporting year within this attending district. A student who is only 504 eligible should not have the special education flag checked. Students who change eligibilities during the year or have more than one disability with different eligibilities may need to have both the 504 flag and the special education flag checked. A student should not be receiving services under both IDEA and 504 for the same disability at the same time. The Section 504 flag should be marked yes if these criteria are met at any point during the reporting year. The talented and gifted tag flags are intellectually gifted, academically talented reading, academically talented math, potential tag, creative ability, leadership ability, visual and performing arts ability. It's possible for a student to be talented and gifted in more than one category, and it is important to accurately represent each area where the student has demonstrated the potential to perform at the 97th percentile on a nationally normed test. Additional information about each specific tag category can be found in the Student Group Flag Field Description section of the Cumulative ADM Manual. The high school entry cohort year is the first year in which the student attended a high school anywhere based on documented enrollment. The high school entry cohort year is set in SSID and cannot be changed without an appeal form. If you need to correct a high school entry year, you can complete the high school entry year correction template to correct a set entry year. Please remember that these forms, once completed, are sent to your regional ESD partner. The enrolled grade code indicates the enrolled grade level of the student or a grade level assigned to an ungraded student based on student age. Now we'll move on to instructional information. Instructional information includes resident school, resident district, and attending school and attending district, the ADM program type, and the tuition type code. The resident district and school represent the district and school boundaries in which the student's parents or guardians are physically located. The attending district and school is the district and school where the student is actually attending. Residency shifts from the parents or guardians when the student reaches the age of 18 or is legally emancipated. A student should be entered on the roll for only one instructional unit at a time. If a student is attending 2 or more schools in the same district, the student should be reported on the active roll at the institution where they attend the majority of their time. If a student is attending more than one district, the district where the student is spending the majority of their time should be reporting the student. There are 16 program types available to use in cumulative ADM collections. Program types 2, 3, and 5 are weighted program types. This means the student was receiving a specific type of instruction that entitles them to extra state school funding. These program types, 2, 3, and 5, cannot be submitted on their own, and they must be submitted with a non-2, 3, or 5 program type. Program type 1 refers to standard enrollment reporting. Most students in Oregon public schools will be reported with a program type 1 record. In order to report students with program type 1, a school must provide the minimum number of instructional hours in accordance with OAR 581-022-2320. Program type 1 records are required to be reported with enrollment information, including session days, days present, days absent, and full-time equivalency FTE. Additionally, the instructional hours should be 0, and the tuition type code for most program type 1 records is S for state funded. For records of students in grade 7 or higher, each program type 1 record also requires an end date code. You can find a complete list of end date codes in the Cumulative ADM manual. Program types 2, 3, and 5 are those weighted program types I mentioned before. These are for students that are receiving additional services on top of their standard enrollment. Program type 2 is for students in an English learner program. Program type 3 is for students who are pregnant and parenting and may be used only when a student meets a set of requirements. And program type 5 is for case management, which is time spent by an instructor working on behalf of a public school student to obtain other educational or services, social services, and does not include time spent on behalf of ESD registered homeschool students. So to be able to use program type 3 for pregnant and parenting, you must be able to answer yes to the following questions before claiming weighted pregnant and parenting funding. 1, is the student pregnant and or is the student parenting their child? 2, does the student's pregnancy or their responsibility as a parent to their child require special accommodations for them to participate in the regularly provided school program? And are those accommodations being provided by the district? 3, does the student have an individualized written plan for services which identifies the specific services, their providers, and funding resources as they relate to the student's pregnancy or the parenting of their child? 4, the student should also not be claimed in the special education child count. Is this true? 5, is the student eligible and being claimed in the ADM collection for their regular education during the time period the student is being claimed for pregnant and parenting weighted funding? Program types 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are instructional hour program types. These program types are reported with instructional hours that match the hours of instruction a student is actually receiving. The session days, days present, days absent, and full-time equivalency are 0 for these records. We have a guidance document posted on the ADM resources page called the Hours of Instruction Reporting Guidance linked on this slide that I would highly recommend for folks using these program types. Program types 11, 12, and 16 are used for reporting different types of college coursework and are reported with the same fields completed as the previous instructional hour types. These program types are reported with instructional hours completed reflecting the number of credits a student has pursued for the specific reporting period. Each cumulative ADM period has a maximum number of allowed credit hours that should be reported in the ADM instructional hour field. The maximum number of hours reported in each period is 12 in first and second, 24 in third, and 36 in annual. Think full-time hours if a student was attending college full-time with 12 credits a term. The session days, days present, days absent, and FTE are all 0 for these program types. So program type 11 is expanded options. Program type 12 is college coursework other, and probably our most common program type for college credits. And program type 16 is for postgraduate scholars. Program type 13 is used as a placeholder when membership information is unknown in first, second, and third period. Program type 13 records are not allowed in annual. This is often for college information, but can be used when other membership information is unknown, such as for students attending in an ODE-approved private alternative school, or other setting. Please remember that you do not need to know how the student did in their class to report the number of attempted credits in the record if this is for college. Program Type 13 records must be removed and replaced with membership information once it's known. If that information is learned after the period is closed, please contact me or your regional ESD partner to get the collection reopened for your edits. I send out multiple audits for these each period to ensure folks get them removed. Program Type 14 is used to report additional outcomes that may not have happened during the current reporting year. We'll go over information that may be reported on a Program Type 14 record and when to report the information over the next few slides. When a Program Type 14 record is submitted, it must be submitted in each subsequent collection for the school year that it is reported in. So if you use a Program Type 14 in first period, it's going to need to be repeated in second, third, and annual for that school year. This slide shows the allowed ADM end date codes that can be used in a Program Type 14 record. End date codes provide information about awarded diplomas, certificates, and other certificates and transfers are included in the available list of codes. There are also a select few other codes allowed. This and the next two slides match what you will find on the Program Type 14 reporting guidance document linked at the bottom of this slide. It's a great reference document if you need additional help, and I personally reference it pretty often. It's important to include your outcome in the correct cumulative ADM reporting period to ensure that the data is included in the correct reports. Shown are scenarios for reporting credentials in the appropriate cumulative ADM reporting period with the Program Type 14 record based on when the credential was awarded. Please be advised that these dates in these scenarios are for the 2021 school year, including the 1920 annual ADM exit adjustment collection. These examples are updated annually on the Program Type 14 reporting guidance document linked on this slide. Shown on this slide are scenarios for reporting transfers and other outcomes in the appropriate ADM period. As with the previous slide, the dates in this scenario are for this school year. These examples are also updated in the guidance document linked on this slide. Program Type 15 began with the 2015-16 school year to identify students enrolled in half-time kindergarten programs. Students enrolled in full-day kindergarten programs, even if they're only attending part day, should be submitted using Program Type 1. Half-time kindergarten refers to any kindergarten program not meeting the minimum instructional hours per OAR 581-022-2320. Program Type 15 records require session days, days present, days absent, and FTE. The tuition type code indicates the tuition type the student is enrolled under during the reporting period. We have S for state funded, F for fully state funded, and P for paid tuition. Most students are reported with S for state funded. The next section of submitted data that we will go over is attendance information. The enrolled date should reflect the first day of the student's actual attendance in an institution or program type. There is an exception to this at the beginning of the school year. If a student has an excused absence of less than 10 school days at the beginning of the school year, they may be counted in membership prior to the first day of attendance, but not prior to the first calendar day of the school year. If the student does not attend during the first 10 days of the school year, they cannot be counted in membership. Enrollment should begin when the student actually begins their enrollment. The end date is the weekday after the student withdrew from the institution or the program type, either through early withdrawal, a change of circumstance, or at the end of the period or school year. If the student is present on October 1, 2020, if the student is enrolled on October 1, 2020, their end date should be October 2. Failure to do this will cause the fall membership numbers to be off. It's especially important to report the enrollment and end date accurately when a student is leaving or beginning a new school. Failure to do this can cause another district to receive an overlap error when trying to submit their data. This is also a great place to remind everyone that with the fluidity we have right now, if a new student is enrolling with you, you need to ensure that you are doing a records request with their previous institution so that that institution knows to drop the student so that there isn't an overlap error when you're reporting in your next period. The next few slides are going to look a little wonky because they are talking about 10-day drops, which, as I mentioned in the beginning, most 10-day drop scenarios have been waived for the 2021 school year by the State Board of Education. I think it's important for viewers to be able to see this information because in future years, there's an expectation that this is going to come back. And if you're new, you should know how to report in normal years as well. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, so I'm going to go through them pretty quickly and you can just review them. So this is one scenario where if a student's withdrawal status can be determined based on absences, you would drop them, where this school year you're not doing this. The next slide is an example of the 10-day drops. So you're dropping after those absences. You will not be doing this year. You should still be trying to make contact with the student until you receive documentation that the student has actually left to go to a different institution, out of state, private school, things like that. Here's an example of notification of absence, of an extended absence, where at the time you would withdraw the student, we are getting some clarification on this, but we have not heard otherwise at this point. This would be considered a notification. Here's that example of enrollment at the beginning of the school year where a student was absent for the first 7 days of school, but their parent had notified the school that the student would be a few days late. The student began on the 8th day of school, so in this case, the student can be considered enrolled on the first day of school, that Tuesday in this scenario. They would be absent but enrolled. And here's the other side of that, where there was no notification, and the student was absent for the first 10 days of school and began on the 11th. Because there was no notification at the beginning of the year, their enrollment doesn't start until they actually enroll on that 11th day. So session days are pre-scheduled weekdays when the majority of students within the same school and grade level are scheduled to be present and under the guidance of appropriately licensed staff. Session days should increase for all students regardless of their enrollment dates and should increase each period for cumulative ADM. As we get ready for winter, I know we're a little early now and it's still pretty warm, so it's hard to think about. Please remember that snow days are typically a removal of session days from the calendar year, so you'll need to adjust your session days for that or adding any days towards the end of the year to make up for them. Days present is the number of days a student was recorded as attending during the reporting period. For a student assigned to an FTE of 1.0, they must be present for more than one half of the morning to be counted as present for the morning, and present for more than one half of the afternoon to be present for the afternoon. Please keep in mind that there are some caveats to this for online and hybrid education that you can find in the Ready Schools Safe Learners or one of the very front slides in this that explains what's considered present. It's definitely a little bit different this year, and we urge districts to ensure that they're reading the Ready Schools Safe Learners guidance to get that information. You should consider this more of an in-person type scenario. Days absent is the number of days the student was recorded as absent from school during the reporting period. Again, you should look to make sure that whatever communications or outreach or anything like that that you have with your students, see if it falls under present or absent in the Ready Schools Safe Learners. But when you've decided that a student is absent, those are also in half-day increments for our program type 1s and 15s. Instructional hours are the number of hours received by a student in the reporting period. These should only include hours the student actually received instruction, not hours the student was scheduled for but did not attend. Full-time equivalency, FTE, is for students that participate in more than one half of the full-day program. They should be given a full-time FTE of 1.0, and students that are participating in one half or less of a full-day program should be given 0.5. So remember that program types 1, 2, and 3 are reported with FTE as 1 or 0.5, and that all kindergarten students that are reported in program type 15 are reported as 1.0. And remember, 15 is the part-time kindergarten, so not our kiddos that are kindergartners attending a full-time program, so it meets the requirements of a full-time program, but they're only attending half-time. The next section for submitted data is student outcomes. These are those enrollment end date codes, diploma type codes, essential skills, and withdrawal factor codes. And remember, essential skills have been waived this school year, but again, this is something I think is important for new submitters to know is a normal thing. You just don't have to do it this year, but if you do, there's still some requirements you have to follow. The enrollment end date code is the code used to describe the student's enrollment status on the enrollment end date. The enrollment end date code is the code used to describe the student's status. So think if a student is with you on October 1 and is expected to still be with you on October 2, you would do a 1A, which are expected to be in the same school, same district, things like that. An end date code is required on all records for students in grade 7 or higher. We use these end date codes for accountability and reporting purposes. And you can find additional information about these early leaver end date codes and high school completer end date codes in the Cumulative ADM manual. The diploma type code is the code used to indicate the type of diploma issued by the district. The diploma type code must be 0 when submitting any end date code other than 4A, 4F, or 4G. Allowable diploma type codes vary based on the appropriate end date code. So, for example, 4A allows 1, 2, 3, and 4, 4F allows 1, 2, and 4, and 4G allows 1 and 2. Students who were last enrolled prior to June 30th, 2020, and were granted a diploma between July 1, 2020 and August 31st, 2020, should be reported with the program type 14 record in first period, so this collection. If the award date was on or before August 31st, 2020, the student will count as a graduate for the 2019-20 school year. Please remember that if you report a program type 14 record in any period other than annual, that record needs to be reported in all subsequent records from first, second, third, and on to annual, depending on when you put it in. If you put it in second period, it only needs to be in second, third, and annual, for example. So here's an example of submitting a summer diploma. Sophia completed her classes on June 4th, 2020, after attending school for the whole year from September 3rd, 2019, but did not meet her final essential skills until August 14th, 2020. This is an example for normal, quote-unquote, times. If we were talking about this actual last school year where essential skills were waived, this would not be an applicable example. But for this case, we're pretending that things are normal and Sophia needed to meet her essential skills. If Sophia didn't, she would have graduated on time on June 4th. So Sophia will have a record in annual of last year, 1920, for the services she received from the beginning of the school year through June 4th. So that's that program type 1 record here. She'll also have a record in annual, in annual or in first period for that program type 14 of when she received that diploma on August 14th, which looks like it was a Friday. So the end date then is the following Monday. And she has an end date code of 4A because she received her diploma and she got a regular diploma, which is code type 1. All right, we are done with the submitted data, and now you'll actually do data submission. So in these next sections, we're going to talk about who submits, how to submit, errors, and audits. If you don't know who submits for this, contact your regional ESD partner or ODE to find out who has submitted in the past. Over the next few slides, we're going to go over specific educational scenarios a student may be in and show how the resident district, resident school, attending district, and attending school field should be reported. Residency for school purposes is an essential concept in the student accounting system. Accurate reporting of the resident district, resident school, and resident county is important. Residency determines which school district is responsible for the education of an individual and also is the basis on which the state school fund, the common school fund, and the county school fund are distributed to local districts. It's important, therefore, that residency of each student be legally determined by each district to assure proper distribution of these funds. This slide shows an example of reporting a student in a standard situation. You'll hear me say where the student's parent or guardian resides for many of these, but please keep in mind that the residency shifts from the parent to the student when the student is over the age of 18 or legally emancipated. It's a mouthful, so I won't say that every time. So here's an example. A student attended the public school within the boundaries of where their parent or guardian resides. For this example, the student's resident district and attending district are the same district ID, and the resident school and the attending school are the same school ID. Alternative schools or programs for students are not, these students are not students attending a public charter school or students attending a traditional school more than half-time. Alternative students are those students identified by the district and placed in a district-approved alternative education program. These are students in public alternative schools and programs, and they're reported at the institution providing the educational decision-making for the student. And they're reported the same as a student in the standard example on the previous slide. So these are not our private approved ODE schools, which we'll go over in the next slide. These are, your standard, the district has an alternative school that the student is going to. They're reported as a normal public school. So this slide shows an example of reporting a student attending an ODE approved private school. A student attends the public school within the boundaries of a private school within the boundaries where they're resident or where the parent or guardian is resident. In this example, the student's resident district is the district where the parent or guardian resides. Their school is also the school where the parent or guardian resides. The attending district is the district that is making the educational decisions for the student. And the attending school is the ODE registered private alternative school. Correct reporting of students in approved private alternative schools is dependent on who made the decision to place the student in the school. If the student is placed by the parent, it's not reported in ADM. If the student is placed by the resident district, you report using standard district reporting. If the student is placed by the courts, the resident district becomes the school district within whose boundaries the school is located. And if the student is enrolled in a charter school, well, the charter school may not contract with an ODE private approved alternative school, so this should not be happening. This slide shows an example of reporting students attending a charter school. They're also a unique situation. So a student is enrolled in a charter school outside the boundaries of where their parent or guardian resides. For this example, the student resident district and attending district are the same district ID, which is the district that is sponsoring the charter school. And the resident school and the attending school are the same, which is the charter school ID. For the sake of state funding and for reporting, charter school residency shifts for students to where that charter school is actually located at. So it's no longer where the parents are located. So this slide shows an example of students attending an ESD program. A student only attends an ESD-run program and no other institution. In this example, the resident district is the district where the student's parent or guardian resides. The resident school is the resident school or district based on who made the decision to send the student to the ESD program. The attending district is the ESD ID, and the attending school is the ESD program ID. It's also important to note that that these ESD programs do need to have an ID in the institution database, and if your ESD program does not, there is a link down here to an email address where you can contact me as that data owner as well. But it's a shared inbox, so you can get some information on what you need to do to get an ID for your ESD program. ESD programs are the only programs that we issue IDs for. So this slide shows an example of a student attending on a tuition agreement. In this case, the attending district would report the student. The attending district would report the student's resident district and resident school in the resident district and school fields, and the attending district, which is the one responsible for reporting the student and where the student is receiving services, would be in the attending district field. The school where the student is receiving their services should be listed in the attending school. This slide shows an example of a student attending on an inter-district transfer agreement. In this example, the resident district and attending district are the district where the student is actually attending, and the resident school and attending school are the schools in which the student is actually attending. So this is another one of those where residency is shifted. All ADM funds will be distributed to the attending district, which by virtue of the agreement is also the legal resident district. This slide shows an example of an ESD registered homeschool student or private school student who is attending for shared time, so for supplemental instruction, think an art class or a math class. In this example, the resident district is the district where the student's parent or guardian resides, and the resident school is also the school where the parent or guardian resides. The attending district is where the student is actually attending, and the attending school is where the student is actually attending. These should be the same because ESD registered homeschool students or students attending a private school may not be claimed as shared time outside of their geographic resident different district, so where their parent or guardian is considered a resident of the school. This slide shows an example of a student attending in a long-term care and treatment facility. In this example, the resident district and resident school are the ODE LTCT ID of 3559, and the attending district is the LTCT contracting district or ESD, and the attending school is the LTCT institution. As a reminder, students in LTCT programs should be reported with tuition type F, which is fully state funded. And as our last example here, we're going to talk about hospital programs. And so in this example, for a student who is receiving services in an ODE approved hospital program, the resident district should be the ODE Hospital ID 5401, and the resident school should be the ODE Hospital ID 5401. The attending district should be the Hospital Contracting District or ESD, and the attending school should be the Hospital Program Institution ID. This is another example where the student should be also reported with tuition type F for fully state funded. And now we're going to move on to actual data submissions. So we're getting towards the tail end here. Cumulative ADM collections can be found in the consolidated collections section of the Secure District website. Shown here are the screenshots of what it looks like to log in and what the screenshot or what the screen will look like when you've logged in. So it's going to show your application list. My list is pretty short, but I wouldn't be surprised if many folks out there have a lot more than this. If you don't have access to the correct collection, please work with your district security administrator to gain access. If you need help finding your district security administrator, you can click on the link on this slide or find this lookup tool in the quick links list on the right-hand side of the district website homepage. So most often, SSIDs are updated and created at the beginning of the school year, unless kiddos are, coming in later or leaving and transitioning to new schools. SSID updates should be completed prior to uploading any student-level data in consolidated collections. You'll actually get an error if you don't update these annually. It'll show it as outdated. You can search for current SSIDs via record management, record maintenance. You can also search for partial name or birth date to try and ensure that you're not creating a duplicate SSID. If the student's been in Oregon and has been at a public school at some point in their school career, they should have an SSID already. It just is a matter of trying to find the correct one. You can submit data to the consolidated collections in two ways. You can file upload, which is often used for more than a few records, and web submission, which is great for adding a small number of records. After submitting data via a file upload, you will immediately be told if the file has passed a preliminary check, which is checking if the column values are correct, etc. When the records have been uploaded into the system, you will receive an email letting you know the number of submitted records and the number of errors that were potentially found in the file. Be advised that over the summer, we did change some of our, over 2 summers ago now, but I'm still seeing this error. We did change the column header for column AP from LEPFG, so the LEP flag, to EL flag, so ELFG. If your SIS has not made this change, this is a great time to get this in there. Otherwise, you're going to be getting an error submitting every single time you file upload. Web submission is nice because as you're submitting the record, it'll automatically error you immediately and tell you what's wrong. But it's also slower if you have tons and tons of records to submit. In most cases where all or many records submitted have the same data element that needs to be updated, such as the session days, submitters may resubmit a CSV file format to override the current data that's submitted. There are 5 key fields that, once edited, will cause a new file upload submission to duplicate the records rather than replace the current ones. On this slide are a list of those key fields. We can omit the collection ID number from this list, that's why there are only 4 shown, because it isn't something available for you to edit in your file upload anyways. It just depends on which collection you're actually uploading to. Changing these fields requires a submitter to request a clear of the data for the entire district or individual schools before submitting, and clear any housekeeping file that would have housed your current errors. You can work with your ESG partners or myself to work on these types of clears and fixes. If you submit a record via web submission, the errors for the record will show up immediately after hitting the Save button. If you submitted data via file upload, you'll have to navigate to the error management and review errors to find a complete list of errors for your collection once you receive an email letting you know that your file has been uploaded. Clicking on the green check mark next to an error message will open the record, and you can actually make edits to it right then and there. Errors in a record are always considered wrong. Business rules built into the consolidated collection application ensure that only values that are allowed in specific fields are being used, and the system compares the reported data to other data reported for the student in the same collection. Records that contain errors are not included in the data collection until they have been resolved. On this slide are 2 common errors that we see a lot of. The first one is membership days, so days present plus days absent, exceeds the number of session days or calendar days. This error is triggered when the number of present days and absent days is higher than the number reported in session days or the available number of calendar days between the enrolled date and the end date. To fix this, confirm that your days present and days absent equal or less than the session days or available days in the calendar. The other error here is end date was provided, but it's not within the reporting period. This error is triggered when the end date that is provided is outside of the reporting period. In first period, that would be a date later than October 2, which is the day after the last day in the reporting period right now for an October 1 actual last day of enrollment. You just need to adjust the end date to be within inside the reporting window to fix this error. So errors that occurred during web submission can be corrected in the original web submission form. Errors that occur in a file upload will be in this review errors that I mentioned before. You need to go to error management and toggle to review errors, and that's where they're going to come up at. And this is just a little screenshot to show you how to navigate to that. We also have audits, which are produced by ODE and are used to ensure that reported data is accurate. Audits are not always wrong, but maybe, and the data being audited should be corrected when discrepancies are discovered. Records that contain audits are included in the data collection, but the data in the records may be incorrect. So here we have 2 common audits on this slide. The first is a student was reported with overlapping attendance in the same school district. This audit is triggered when the student is reported with differing schools in the same district and the dates of enrollment overlap. To fix this, Ensure that the students' records accurately represent their attendance and correct overlapping enrollment dates. Students, the other common audit here is students reported as attending schools in multiple districts on the first school day of October. This error is triggered when two districts report the same student as being enrolled with them on the first school day of October, our snapshot day. This is not necessarily an error for your district, but may affect your fall membership report. You'll want to confirm that the enrollment dates being reported is accurate for this student. So these types of audits you'll get during the review audit window or during the second round audits, which are sent out to you via spreadsheet from the ESD partners. There are other audits that I do on my own, just checking things so I can try and capture some of these issues before you go into the actual audit so that you can fix them ahead of time, such as I look for program 13 records that haven't been fixed, or wonky end dates where maybe you accidentally submitted all of your kiddos as their end date of October 1, which means to me they've actually unenrolled or their enrollment ended on September 30th, and you can check those before you actually go into the audit process. But these are the ones you actually get legitimate audits for that aren't just emails from me. Audits don't occur immediately after, like I said. They're produced during our review audit window. So there's this period of time where the collection is closed after the collection window where we try not to open it up for anyone to make corrections so that our audits can be accurate. Then you get the audits first in the actual collection here in the review audits where you can see it here. And you can go through them there. And then in a week or so after that closes, you'll get the second round audits if you still have audits that are wonky. Once you've submitted your data and made any corrections to errors, it's good practice to download a production download to ensure you have a copy of your most recently submitted data and to use this to review your data for accuracy. A production download is a system-generated CSV file that shows every piece of data submitted to the collection. Once data has been submitted to the collection and all errors have been corrected, obtaining a production download gives the submitter a backup file of their collection data. This is also great because you submit a file from your SIS system, which may have some errors in it on our end, but you fix those errors now, so the file you're getting back from us is a file that is the data as it is now with all of those errors corrected. There are two types of production downloads. We have an internal and an external. An internal is a file containing all student-level data submitted by to the collection by the district or school. And the external is a file containing student-level data for students that are resident in the district but are attending elsewhere. Here's a list of some of the ways you can use a production download to review your data. I would recommend adding a filter to the top row of your download if possible, depending on the software you use. It can make sorting and reviewing your data easier. You can look at only the end dates to ensure that the reported end dates for your kiddos is good. Students enrolled on October 1 should have an end date of October 2. Ensure that all kindergarten students who started later than other elementary grades have fewer session days. You can locate all of your program type 13 records and replace them easily by searching by ADM program type. You can find specific students by SSID, which in this list is actually called check digit student ID. It's this code here on the table or on the slide. You can confirm all reported Oregon regular diplomas have an end date code and a diploma type code. And that would be the end date code of 4A and a diploma type code of 1. You can also verify that all of your tuition type code P students should not be receiving state school funding, because that's what P is telling us, that they are not receiving state school funding for those records. And we are at the tail end of the training. So these are our online resources. We have the ADM resources page, which does have an updated ADM manual. The audit and review manual should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. We have additional guidance documents like the program type 14 one I mentioned and my contact information. We also have an ADM micro-training webpage, which is definitely lacking at this point. It only has a few trainings on there, and I still have the hope of adding more when time allows. We also have the ODE data collection team. This is myself, Robin Salkup, and Ryan Clark. Beth Blumenstein is still on a job rotation in another office. So I have picked up regular attenders. Robin has graduation and dropout reporting, and Ryan has ninth grade on track. So if you have any questions about any of those, feel free to give us shoot us an email. We are teleworking right now, so calls are a little harder, so email is definitely the best way to go for quick contact. And these are our two amazing ESD partners, Karen and Peter. They're always available to answer your questions. They're incredibly knowledgeable and can help you with anything you need. Their phone numbers and emails are here. We also have the ODE help desk information here. This is for issues if you're file uploading and you're getting an error while doing that, if you need to merge SSIDs, or actual application issues that aren't just, business rule errors that you need to work through the issue for. We also have these upcoming trainings. Robin is giving a exit adjustment training for October 1, on October 1, 2020 at 2 p.m. And the graduation and dropout reporting training is on October 15th at 2 p.m. Staff position is at 2 p.m. on December 2nd, and the next ADM training is second period, and it will be on December 3rd. At this point, I don't know if that will be a recorded training or a live training. I apologize. And these dates are subject to change. Things are very fluid right now, so I apologize. I have some additional resources on this page as well that I highly recommend anyone, especially new to ADM, sign up for. Those are the Data Collection Committee DCC meetings. Those are once a month, and they're typically virtual. In normal years, we would have 2 in-person meetings, one in February, one in August, but right now they're still just online, and that's where we go over any changes to collections. We have the Assessment and Accountability Update. It is a newsletter that goes out every Thursday afternoon, and that's what we actually use to give any updates or reminders. And then we have the informal accountability webinars, which are just once a month, and they kind of go over the assessment and accountability checklist, that big document. They go over what's coming up for reminders, any known changes, just any general chatting, and you're also able to submit questions to that if there's anything you'd like additional information on. Thank you.